suck it up, to endure something painful, unpleasant, or otherwise dissatisfactory, to deal with or recover from some hardship or stress. Suck it up, endure something painful.
What's up? Welcome to episode 2 of the Suck It Up Man podcast. If you would be so kind, check us out on all the socials. We'll pin it on the screen, but we're either Suck It Up Man or Suck It Up Man Live. And how you feeling today, Josh?
I'm feeling pretty good. I had a small epiphany today. And this is kind of weird and doesn't really deal with anything we're talking about, but my wife, when I first met her, only ate eggs scrambled. And that's the only way she ate them. And then today, of course, I was like, hey, honey, how do you want your eggs? Because recently she's been having them over medium. And she kind of laughed and she looked at me and she goes, well, since we have sourdough toast, I'll take them over medium. And it just gave me an epiphany that I don't think, and this is not to dock her dad's cooking or her mom's cooking, but honestly just don't think my wife's ever had eggs cooked properly, which is the reason why she always had them scrambled.
Okay.
So that was one of my epiphanies of this morning, if specifically. How do you like your eggs, Wayne? I'm just kind of curious.
I'm usually a scrambled guy too, but I like over medium as well. We'll do, like, my wife will request a kind of like Jersey style sandwich, which is usually like egg on, when you're back in Jersey, there's bagel shops in pretty much every shopping center. So you usually, when you walk into the bagel shop, you say, I want BEC SPK. Now, do you know what BEC SPK is?
Bacon, egg, and cheese, and then SPK, I can't remember. You told me this once before, but I can't remember what SPK is.
Yeah, so SPK is salt, pepper, ketchup. So that's a pretty common way that people order it. So yeah, she'll have me kind of make, I guess, like over medium, where the yolk is still slightly soft. So I made those for her yesterday as well. So
nice. Well, and diving into today's episode, it's funny. I have what I want to call like a story time moment where I realized the things that we're doing on this podcast, which is talking about men's health and how men's health is just grossly overlooked. I had a conversation with a female professional poker player, and she reached out to me, and I'm not going to use her name because I still have respect for her. And we were discussing different things, and I'm not trying to get political at all, but one of the things I brought up, and Bryson, if you can pull up the very first screenshot where it's me talking about part of the issues in society and the disconnect between men and women, is men are really unattracted towards people who are stomping their feet and whining and crying like a 13-year-old. And I was trying to explain to her, like, this isn't necessarily like my personal perspective, but generally speaking, when a man sees anybody who's just stomping their feet and whining and complaining, it's a huge turnoff. And you can go ahead, now that our viewers have seen that and read that, you can go ahead and like go to the next slide, because it was one of those things where I was trying to explain to her, hey, this is an issue that we're running into in today's society. And rather than her like look at it objectively, she comes in and she goes, oh yeah, blame men's problems on, the reactions of women. And it's like, you're doing exactly what I was just talking about. Here you are stomping your feet. And first of all, I love women. I'm not trying to like hate on women at all. I have a ton of respect for women. And then, yeah, you can go to the next one, Bryson, because eventually, she starts bringing up things that just have no relevance, at least in a man's perspective, or at least in my perspective, when she was starting saying, oh, women couldn't have checking accounts until 1974, which I found out that might've been a little bit false according to my 80-year-old mother. But, yeah, I was trying to say to her, I'm like, what the hell does that have anything to do with in society? Like, all you are now is you're stomping your feet, telling me women couldn't have checking accounts on their own until 1974. And I'm sitting here being like, how does that apply to any of the issues that we're running into in society with men and women? And it just seems like there's a pretty significant disconnect there, where I'm trying to tell her something objectively, like, hey, guess what? One of the least attractive things towards men is women stomping their feet and being like, it's not going my way. I don't know, Wayne. What's your thoughts on this? Was I being too out of line here, or what? You can go ahead and take that down now, Bryson. What are your thoughts, Wayne?
No, I agree. It seems like anytime people have problems, they want to point the blame elsewhere instead of just taking a look in the mirror. Whether it's dating or just in life in general, right? If people are having kind of a cold streak with dating, they want to say, oh, all men are trash, or all women are too easy, or this, that, and the other, right? Instead of just taking a look in the mirror, right? Like, people want to meet the quote unquote like their dream soulmate, but like, are you actually a person that is worthy of this dream person that you want to meet, right? Like, what are you doing to better yourself? Like, are you taking care of yourself physically? Are you taking care of yourself mentally? Like, how is your finances, right? I mean, finances is 80% of divorces. That's the number one reason why they're initiated. And actually 80% of divorces are initiated by women. So you definitely, as a guy, have to really be on your stuff, because that's just kind of the reality nowadays.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those things where I was just taken aback, and I don't honestly don't know what her age category is. I don't know if she's a millennial. I think she's a little bit younger. She's probably in her 30s is my guess. And I have a ton of respect for her, and again, it was not one of those things where I'm like trying to harp on her, but when I was trying to explain to her the issues that we're dealing with, she eventually said, "You're insane, goodbye," and blocked me. And I was just like, wow, here we are in this cancel culture where I'm trying to tell you, hey, one of the issues is XYZ, and then you don't even listen. You just block people. I was a little taken back by that. But yeah, we need more communication in today's world and today's society, don't you think, Wayne?
Yeah, I think just respecting the other side is important, right? I mean, these last, I don't know, probably since COVID, I mean, with all the, political stuff and everything like that. I mean, it's such a divisive time, like people, whether you're right leaning, left leaning, or whatever your viewpoints are, like, I think people should have an open mind and say, like, okay, I don't agree with this point, but put yourself in that person's shoes. Like, you should be able to say, okay, like, I don't agree with it, but I can understand where you're coming from, and why you have this viewpoint. But I think nowadays, it's, especially with social media, it's so easy just to be like, oh, you like A, I like B, like, well, I hate you. Well, why is it, we can't kind of like put aside our differences. It's a crazy time.
Yeah, I think that's, and what's funny is that transitions really importantly into our first topic that we're discussing today, and our first guest. For those of you guys who don't know, we are going to be discussing with our first guest the specific issue of suicide. So, if suicide is a touchy subject for you, just fair warning, these are some things that we are going to be talking about today. And, there's some really interesting statistics out there, particularly with men. And we'll bring up Brent here in just a minute. But yeah, like 80% of suicides right now are with men. And as a public service announcement, if you are thinking about suicide or hurting yourself, 988 is the suicide prevention hotline. You can text that, you can call that. And you can reach out to even myself. If you're having any horrible thoughts about that, because I've had some personal experiences with that, which we'll get into in a little bit. But yeah, suicide is a current epidemic right now. Apparently, approximately 100 men a day in the United States end up taking their own life. and that's a pretty staggering number, and we can bring up Bryson, if you can bring up Brent so we can start chatting with him about it. But Wayne, you want to give out some more of the statistics on suicide that's there?
Yeah, I was recently reading a really great book. It's called Of Boys and Men, and there was a study done out of Australia that basically looked into men who committed suicide, and they kind of did studies on the suicide notes. And the two words that came up the most in these suicide notes were useless and worthless. So really, to feel needed is the most basic requirement. I mean, that's probably the biggest thing I learned during the COVID times, is obviously when everyone was kind of shut out from going out in public pretty much for months and months at a time. I learned that really wherever we are in life, whether you're rich, you're poor, you're married, single, whatever it may be, we all yearn community and connection. Like we all want to feel like we're connected in some way. And I think COVID just kind of was the accelerant to this, right? I mean, because people were already lonely before that. And then obviously you tell people, hey, you can't go outside, you can't go to bars, you can't go out in public. I mean, it really just kind of made it worse. But I think the issue with men, and I know you've had experience not with suicide, but like with the whole domestic abuse thing, is with men, there's such a stigma out there where, I mean, that's really why we call this podcast what it is, Suck It Up, Man, because I feel like if a woman says, hey, I'm having issues, it's much more accepted, and there's going to be a lot more people to come out and support this woman. But if a guy, I mean, first off, they probably won't come out in public and say it, but even if they do, you don't get that nearly the same reaction. You get suck it up, man, or you get like, what are you doing? Like, you're supposed to be a man, like you're supposed to be tough and masculine. Like, what are you doing having these issues? And it's just tough. And I know it's not going to be fixed overnight, but I think just being open and having conversations with people, and that's really what we're trying to do here. We're really just trying to start the conversations. We don't come off as experts in these fields. I mean, we've had a lot of different experiences in life, but we're just trying to start the conversations and just make people feel comfortable talking about whatever is going on in their life.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, like they even said, like, imagine you're at a workplace and you go up to your HR person and you're a female and you say, oh, I've been having lots of depressive thoughts lately. I've been thinking about hurting myself. Generally, the HR person or even your coworker is going to be a little bit more apt to listen to what you have to say. Where if you're a guy and you go up to an HR person and you say, I've been thinking about hurting myself, they're going to be like, oh, well, I'm not going to listen to you. We need to either get you mental help right away or something else, and for those of you who have thoughts of suicide or hurting yourself, just to let you know that you're not alone. I mean, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has had issues with depression and suicide. Justin Bieber, Dan Reynolds, who's the lead singer for Imagine Dragons, Michael Phelps. I mean, so it does hit all across all paths, all occupations. Brent, we're bringing you on because you happen to be well researched in this study. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you can contribute to this topic of men's health and how suicide plays in a role in that, or hopefully not a role in it, but how to prevent that and stuff.
Right. So I'm actually a psychologist. I graduated in 2022. Actually, when COVID hit, I moved to Michigan, decided to finish my master's, and then I was going to go on the PhD. But I ended up, after my master's, I decided to go to law school instead. However, my thesis was on originally suicide and suicide prevention, and just like men's health in general is just kind of a big divisive topic right now. And a lot of the stuff that you guys are talking about and what you're kind of going into, I mean, we could have like 15 episodes with just the stuff that I've been through, because I make interesting decisions, and But yeah, so I am a psychologist. I'm not licensed in the state of Michigan, but I can kind of speak academically to a lot of things and kind of give a little bit more insight where needed.
Well, and September, just so everybody knows, September is
But
Suicide Awareness Month. So this is coming in at the right time as far as talking about suicide. But, you know, one of the things that I've found interesting with suicide and specifically with men is, uh, you know, men generally have reached out and talked about two people about being depressed. Something like 82% is one of the study I saw where men have actually reached out and talked to people about that. And then you see other studies where they say, well, only 20% of men seek professional help. And I think kind of going back to what Wayne was saying, where suicide with men tends to be a sense of like not belonging, or not, not having any value or worthiness, where they found a lot of people who had suicide. I mean, I guess you could chalk it up to a mental health issue, but they just came to the logical conclusion that I don't have anything worth living for. Like, I have no value and I have no worth. In your studies and whatnot, is that something that you found, Brent?
yeah, so like what you're referring to is like, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's kind of the loving and belongingness. It's like that's a big print or big topic along those lines. And like when you get in those negative mindsets, people tend to self isolate. And when you're reaching out and your feelings or what you say is going on, typically as a man, they're minimized. Like you guys were saying earlier, it's either minimization, deflection, and then there's a lot of like external social pressure as a man that like, okay, you got to deal with this on your own, like figure it out. Um, and as most men go through life, you don't really talk about this with your guy friends because I mean, like they'll pretty much say the same thing. There's a bit of a social stigma with that. I mean, you do have friends that you can talk about that kind of stuff with, or most people should. Um, but I mean, if you go to like, and it's not to put anything against women, but if you go to women about like your mental health issues, you're like, if it's women that are important in your life, like a significant other, bad choice, and you'll probably get destroyed. Because it just tends to people will look like that person will look at you differently, and once that bridge is crossed, you can't go back. So,
So
but
you're
yeah,
saying like men have an issue even if they're in a relationship with like a spouse and they're like, "Hey, I've been really depressed and I've been thinking about hurting myself." That even the spouse who's a female will be like, "Well, what the hell? Why? What's going on? You know, what's wrong with you?" Instead of just like opening up and talking about it.
yeah. I mean, it's all situational. I mean, not all women are like that, but it's even if your spouse cares about you and wants you to get better and stuff like that, that's always going to be something that's in the back of their head because as a man, you're not supposed to show weakness. I mean, it's just or like, I mean, I guess biologically, but it's how our species has been successful. The man is the, caretaker, or not the caretaker, but
The
the
providers and the
protector,
protectors.
provider. Yeah, absolutely. And we're not supposed to be weak. So when you start showing weakness, and then when that person starts showing weakness along a lot of people, like there's a lot of stigma. I have a lot of friends who have some psychological issues, and they are vulnerable because of them, and they show those weaknesses. And I mean, a lot of names get associated with those types of people, but they're not really listened to. And like I said, that it's often like their feelings are minimized. And like you were sharing with your story earlier, with the poker woman that you were talking to. I mean, it's along those same lines. It's people will hear these things, and in that situation, they go right to defensive, even if you're not talking about them specifically. And then it's projection, deflection, and minimization of the other person's feelings. And you end up getting down a rabbit hole where when the other person isn't making sense because they're trying to jump through hoops to justify a certain narrative that they kind of hold, and it's not really valid anymore in today's society. Like men are kind of cast aside, and there is a very good reason for suicide rates. Unfortunately, a lot of that has to do with social media and dating. But yeah, when we get into a situation where that love and belongingness, I think it's the third pillar of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When that's not met, the entire system falls apart. And I mean, yes, some men might seek professional help, but even then, there's stigma associated with that. So if you're seeing a counselor, which I strongly suggest anybody sees, or you're getting psychotherapy, telling people that you are is there's a social stigma with that, because then you're going to be perceived as weak and less of a man, and that's kind of the
So
broader issue.
what would be some of your recommendations or takeaways or things that men can do if there's somebody out there listening today who's struggling with depression or thinking about suicidal thoughts, like with the stigma, how do we overcome those things, and what would you recommend to anybody who is listening to what would you recommend to them?
So first of all, like suicide in general, or having those like suicidal ideations, it's very intimate and very personal. So number one, I think absolutely reach out, suicide hotlines, therapists, stuff like that. If you don't want to be associated with the stigma, kind of keep it to yourself. And the one thing that with any mental health issue is it doesn't matter how many people get involved and try to help you. It's a personal and an intimate thing. Like it's something that that person needs to overcome. And when you're dealing with suicide, often like you have major depressive disorders and chemical imbalances. So you're not in the correct frame of mind. But even then, like it's something that you have to overcome by yourself. And if I was going through something like that, and I've had friends, and I just lost somebody a month ago that was like pretty much the closest friend I had. And when you're going through that and you don't want to deal with stigma or any outside societal pressure, because that will influence your healing journey, I would just kind of keep it quiet and keep everything close. And I mean, poker players, so you kind of keep the cards close to the vest, kind of a thing. And as you progress and you get more into like your acceptance of what you are and what you were going through, then you can start talking about that. But in the initial stages, I really wouldn't talk about what you were doing or how you were doing it unless you felt it was beneficial. But I think for the most part, it's not going to be beneficial for most people, even if they perceive that others are going to be happy that they're seeing somebody, um, or trying to deal with those thoughts. It's just kind of keep it quiet, keep it close, and then get to a point where you feel that you're in a good place to start sharing, and then kind of do that. But also be selective who you share things with.
Now, why do you say be selective? Because there is such a stigma out there.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I said, I mean, there's um, and it's not just women, like men too. We're
Well, yeah,
all
I
ever.
imagine like if we're all sitting around a campfire having, a few beers or whatever, a few drinks and a doob or whatever the case may be, and then somebody's like, "Hey, Wayne, I've been thinking about hurting myself." It's like, what the hell is this guy
Yeah.
talking about, right?
Buzzkill.
Yeah,
Yeah, like what a great time to bring this up, bro.
yeah, yeah. Go sit back in your corner. Okay, you gotcha. Um, but yeah, and it's kind of, as a society, we do tend to minimize certain things. But I mean, again, it goes back to our social roles that have made humanity a successful species for what 250,000 years. It's the social roles that we've developed, and men being the protectors, female being the caregivers. Like it's just we've kind of entered into an era where, I mean, as far as safety goes, there's outside of like political issues and war, there isn't all that much of anymore. There's really nothing to protect. So men's roles are now getting minimized and diminished. And in the wake of all of that, I think in general as a society, like the what made men men is kind of just changing. And with that dynamic being like changing, a lot of people are getting lost on the way, and a lot of issues that we've probably always had are just kind of getting dismissed because it isn't the societal norm.
Gotcha. So does that mean like suicide rates are increasing recently? Like I was
Mhm.
looking at some statistics, and obviously during COVID was one of the highest rates of
Yeah.
suicide. And I know it's been creeping up a little bit. And I know even in recent years, a specific age group, like men between 50 and 59, which I thought was really interesting.
Yes.
Suicide rates is increased by like 50%. And that's according to
Mhm.
the actionalliance.org, which is a suicide awareness group. But I thought that was an interesting age group that suicides are increasing between 50 and 59. And like some of the highest suicide rates are older men, but that could be leading to a lot of other issues too. Like if people are diagnosed with terminal cancer or something and they just choose to end their own life their own way, is a little bit different than if it's somebody who's 16, 18, 25, you know. Um,
Mhm.
but is that why you're seeing a steady rise back in the increase of suicides?
So it's two, well, there's two major groups that are pretty much comprised of most of the suicide, and it's Native American, Alaskan Americans, and white non-Hispanics. And the biggest areas, I mean, I'm not 100% up on the research, but the biggest areas is I think 16 to 30, and then that 50 to 59, and then those two, it's they're separate reasons for both of those being the highest rate, but like the 50 to 59, probably a bigger issue with that is again the loving and belongingness that at that age those men are, if hopefully they have a good marriage, but if they don't, that's usually around the time that divorce creeps in. um but additionally, if you do have a good marriage and you have kids, that's kind of around the time when your kids go away and off to school, and that can be a contentious time in relationships, because you go from when you were very young, you were together, if you followed a conventional path, and got to meet each other, learn about each other, and then you have kids,
Yeah,
and
have
basically
kids, and then yeah, when they grow
15
up and
years
move out,
later.
you kind of yeah, you kind of lose your sense of purpose. You're like, my kids are all out of the house. I don't know what to do now besides stare at my wife all day, and hopefully that's not a good reason to off yourself. I mean, I don't think there's
Oh
any
no,
good reason to off yourself, but
no,
um
absolutely not.
yeah, I could see that. Now you said the other group is what, 16 to 30?
I think it's around 16 to 30, and there's a ton of research being done right now, but because it's so early on, it's kind of showing like social media's impact, and especially with youth, it is they're all correlational studies, so you can't really determine causation just based off of correlation, but the vast majority of the studies are just showing like a rapid increase in anxiety and depression rates among youth, and especially men, because again, like we as men, we don't really have, not just because of the social stigma, but it's just very uncommon for men to seek help, and when you do, it's not always the greatest. And then there's also the issue of there's a severe shortage of like good therapists out there, and I've heard so many horror stories about people who've either gone to couples counseling, people that were psychologically unstable. There's a situation that in my current employer where a significant other of one of the employers went to somebody, got seen, they validated all of his feelings and gave him a diagnosis that is not even remotely correct. And I mean, I'm there's some ethical boundaries that I don't really want to cross, but and as a man, they label, get you out the door, throw you on meds, and like in his instance in particular, it's not even a remotely close diagnosis, and it's the underlying problem is what keeps creeping up, and it's never going to get addressed because it's not being accurately diagnosed. And a lot of times with men, that's kind of what happens. They'll go in, they'll get a diagnosis, somebody will throw them on antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication, and it might mask the problem, but it's not uncovering everything, which is why like actual therapy is so good. But therapy has also transitioned with technology to telehealth, which is still good, but it's not as good as being in person. But again, you still need a good therapist to even go with, and those are difficult to find.
And when you say telehealth, you mean people doing like therapy appointments via Zoom or whatever the case may be, something like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah, I know from my experience, I mean, I don't have a medical background like you do, Brent, but I mean, I know for me, like whenever I felt, I mean, I've never been like have suicidal thoughts, but whenever I'm feeling super depressed or anxious, I mean, me just being out and just like, I mean, I'm very introverted by nature. I guess I'm more of an ambivert. I learned recently, but I know like whether we're on poker trips or in the past, I've been depressed, like just kind of forcing myself to go out in public and be around other people just helps quite a bit. And I know, you know, a lot of us are, it's not natural to do so, but, you know, just being out with people. And I think that's another issue like social media has created is relationships now are pretty much mostly done online, right? I mean, we were in Florida a couple weeks ago and we ended up chatting with these younger women, and they said no one really approaches them anymore. It's all pretty much online. And I think we have to kind of go back to the old school a little bit where people are actually going out and like interacting in person. Um, because the way we're doing things is not working. I mean, basically what's happening with social media is, you know, the top 10% of guys are doing really well, but then the rest of the guys are just kind of left in the dust. And um, I don't think, I mean, this should be something they teach in school, but it should literally be like how to go up to a random stranger and just like start a conversation. Like not even like try to like pick up somebody, but just like see somebody. Like, you know, this is like, and for anyone watching who maybe doesn't have a large group of friends or whatever it may be, like I would recommend like getting into sales. I mean, Josh has a sales background. I have a sales background. I know like when I was younger and had no clue like how to actually talk to people. I was doing door-to-door sales, which I mean, looking back, it sucked, but it was an amazing experience. You know, being able to like knock on someone's door. That I was working in the Bronx, like like being able to get someone just to open the door and then sell them a product. It's really the same thing in any kind of relationships. You know, like you're selling yourself as opposed to a product, but doing sales, even if it's just for like a summer, you're like a college kid and like, you know, you're not really doing much this summer, like go get a sales job. And every company needs sales. Like whether you look on any of these top sites, like sales is always the number one category that needs jobs. So like just being able to go out and like have a conversation with people, like that is such a huge skill that's going to take you far in life. Right? Josh, you could probably speak on that.
Yeah, you know, and it's kind of funny. I used to work at this one place called Circuit City, which I know some of our younger viewers are like, what the hell is Circuit City? It's basically a Best Buy, but commission sales. So, in any case, I had a manager. His name was Chris Scudder. I'll never forget his name. Great guy. But for salespeople, he always used to say the same thing. When you approach somebody, and this was his end, right? And I'm not saying it's my end, but it was his end. He would go, "Oh my God, I love those shoes. I have a pair just like them." And he'd go, "I spent like," and he'd always pick a number way higher than what he knew the shoes were worth. So like if the shoes were being sold for like $100, he's like, "Man, I got them on sale for like $150. How much did you spend on those shoes?" And they'd be like, "I spent like $80 on them." Like when you start off the conversation with a compliment, "Hey, I love XYZ. B, I bought something just like that." And then C, I want to make you feel good and smart by making me, I don't know, really like look dumb, but like, "Hey, I spent more than you did," you know, and then you're like, "Oh man, you got such a great deal on them." And then he'd be like, "Hey man, I'm Chris. What brings you in today?" You know what I mean? It was just like the perfect icebreaker. And obviously if you're a guy going up to a girl, you can't be like, "Hey, are those, the Steve Maddens that came out last fall? I bought a pair just like those last fall," you know. But you can go up and say to a lady, you know, or somebody, "Hey, I really like your XYZ. That looks, you know, I saw something like that for sale for, you know, $300 or something. I'm just kind of curious. What did you spend on that? You know, I got a friend of mine who likes those outfits," you know, or something, to just be able to break up the ice. But yeah, when you said that in sales, you know, the other thing about sales, not to get off topic here, but they tend to be some of the highest paying jobs as well. So there, in our market, in our society, with everything transitioning over to AI, yeah, sales will help you. Definitely, it'll put you outside of your comfort zone, and it'll force you to talk to people and have conversations that you may never thought you'd have. And I used to tell people all the time, when I would teach them sales, I would say my job is to, like, if your comfort zone is here, my job is to put you up here or down here. I want to put you outside of your comfort zone. And I had a personal trainer tell me that once. They said, if your comfort zone is right here, not that I look like I have a personal trainer, that's okay. But they would say, if your comfort zone's here, I want to put you outside of your comfort zone on working out, because it's going to force you to recognize different muscles or whatever the case may be that you realize you didn't have before. And I guess going back to like suicide, if you are an introvert or an ambivert, as you are, Wayne, if you are a little bit more keeping to yourself, one of my advices that I could give to the guys that are listening to this podcast is get outside your comfort zone. If your comfort zone is staying at home on a Saturday night, playing video games all night and drinking by yourself, get outside of your comfort zone, stop playing the video games, go out to a bar, go see a movie, or even just like post on social media. Try using that as an advantage versus a disadvantage. Hey, everybody, it's Saturday night and I have nothing to do. Let's go to the movies. I was talking with a gentleman who's in the process of getting divorced, and he was telling me about how he was using AI to start up conversations with every single female that he had friends with on Facebook that lived in a like 3-hour radius of him, just saying, hey, it's the weekends, it's Friday night, what are you up to? Like, just as an eye opener. So even if you are an introvert, using something like that can definitely help. So what are your thoughts on that, Brent, since you're a little bit more studied on it than we are?
Yeah, so first of all, Wayne was talking about the like kind of getting out there and putting yourself out there, like, and social skills among especially the youth has they're pretty much non-existent at this point. Like recently I was in law school and I'm in my 30s. I go to law school and everybody's like in their early 20s. Like the group I hung out with was like between 24 and 26, and we would all go out, and it was strange for me. And I have seen it like in practice and stuff, but like we would be out and everybody's on their phone, and I'm like, all right, is anybody going to talk here, or what are we doing here? Like, what's the point? And there were two people that were dating and would just text back and forth, and they're sitting next to each other, and it's like, I mean, the dynamic is not sustainable. And at the same time, with social media, there's just all of these outside influences, and as a man, and like Wayne was saying, the top 10%, they're doing well. It's the funny thing with the top 10% is a lot of those people aren't looking for what they're proposing, and they're kind of just looking to pick up and and then create more issues for everybody else down the road. But when that keeps happening and we keep compounding trauma and all of that, it gets worse and worse and worse. And then those people that you want to go and approach at like a bar or something like that, if they have their social group around them, and it's nothing against women, but women tend to be protective of other women. If you're a single guy and you don't look like you belong in a magazine or don't look well put
Like,
together, and you try to go up to an attractive woman, like, you are like, bring a body bag. But
yeah, if you don't look like Drake or Chris Hemsworth, they're not interested, basically, right?
yeah. And then like because I have friends that like are very, very wealthy, and they'll go up to people and they try to be super flashy so they get that kind of attention, but then their relationships never work out because they're starting it on a certain precedent that there's no chance.
Well, and
But
it's funny you're talking about the social anxiety. That reminds me. I'll say two things. One, going up to a group of women. I'm going to park that in a second. But the social anxiety. I have a kid who is turning 21 this year, and I'll never forget when she was with us. I said, "Hey, can you call and order pizza?" And the thought of her dialing the phone to
Mhm.
order pizza was terrifying.
Yeah,
And I
that
was
is something.
like, just dial the number. They pick up the phone like all the time. Just dial the number. And she was just like, no, can't we just order it online? And I was just like,
Mhm.
what is this world coming to where you can't even dial the number? But the other thing about going up to a group of women, and here, and obviously I have a little bit more confidence than most men, and I understand that, but I will tell you, if you are dressed really well as a man, you do tend to get a few extra looks from women. And recently Wayne and I dressed up in Dumb and Dumber outfits with blue and orange tuxedos. And I'll never forget, because I told Wayne, I said, we just need to walk around the casino. And he goes, why? And I said, well, you went to bed early that night, but I decided to walk around the casino and I had the most amazing experience. And he goes, what do you mean? And I said, I'd walk up around, there'd be a group of, 6 to 8 women, all dressed to the nines, all decked out. And here I am in this orange tuxedo, which you could spot from across the casino floor. Trust me, I know that. And I would say, as I would walk by, they would stop talking and they would all look at me. And even the ones that had their backs turned towards me, they would notice, why are all my girlfriends staring at somebody? And I got the craziest looks. They would just stop and turn and look, and they'd be like, oh, why, hello, sir, And I'll never forget, I told my wife the very next morning, I said I had the greatest experience. I said I walked around, just walked next to 5, 6 groups of ladies. And of course, I was dressed to the nine, and I don't expect, 20-year-olds necessarily to be dressed to the nines, but I was absolutely decked out. So if you are having a difficult time approaching women or breaking that social norm, or if you're a little introverted, if you dress to your best, and put your best foot forward, if nothing else, you can use it as an icebreaker and say, I dressed as absolutely best as I could. I see you did as well. I ended up spending like an hour and a half getting ready. How long did you spend getting ready? There's your opener, there's your compliment. There it is right there. Oh my God, you look amazing. I spent like an hour and a half getting ready, or I spent 2 hours getting ready. How long did you spend getting ready? That could by itself can be an icebreaker. I don't know. Wayne, do you have experiences with that when you're all dressed up and fancy?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to mention the Dumb and Dumber suits as well. Yeah, I mean, if we were single, we could have had more fun than we did, but I think with guys, the thing to realize, the benefit for us. I mean, obviously, with women, it's going to be largely based on their beauty. There's other factors too, but for guys, the good thing is it's really a sliding scale. So like, if you consider yourself, like average to below average, or wherever you consider yourself, you have to work on something else. Like, we've all been out and we've all seen maybe like a really attractive woman, and she's with maybe a below average looking guy, and like there's something that guy is doing. I mean, sure, sometimes it's money, but a lot of times it's just that guy, like he's kind of like the honey badger. Like he just doesn't give a shit. Like he'll walk up to a group of 6 to 8 women, like Josh was saying, and like he will not care. And like women really are into confidence. So if you're able to do that, you're going to separate yourselves from even guys that are way better looking than you. So I would just recommend, John, that's a good recommendation. Like, really dressing up, putting on like a nice outfit that's going to make you stand out. I think in the dating world, that's called peacocking. Certainly an orange suit would definitely do that. But really just building up those social skills. Like, I mean, nowadays, people can't even have a conversation with their spouse. Like Brent's saying, they're texting each other at the table. So just you being able to like walk up to a group of people and like have a conversation, like that is going to put you like heads, above the competition. So I think you just got to kind of put yourself out there. I mean, it's easier said than
And
done,
one of
of
the
course.
things,
Good.
right. One of the things I do to practice more social interaction is I have a rule anytime I'm eating, whether it's going out to eat or eating at the table, or whatever the case may be, is I put your phones away. It's a hard and fast rule, and even my parents, who are 80 years old, they don't oblige to it, which drives me nuts. But I do, and my wife does. So if we go out to eat, we put our phones away. We don't pull them out at all, so that way we can have face-to-face interaction. Because I think that's something that's missing, is just having that deep connection. And I even saw, I can't remember what it was on. I can't remember if it was Diary of a CEO, but I saw somebody saying, if you're having a difficult time communicating with your spouse, put everything away and sit across from your spouse and just stare at them. And obviously you have to tell your spouse, we're going to practice this exercise. Stare at them for 5 minutes without saying a word, and stare at their eyes. And they said, you go through this process, and this is really interesting. If any of you are listening at home and you're like, my wife and I are having issues communicating, or whatever the case may be, don't say a word. Tell them they're going to practice this exercise with you, but stare at them for 5 minutes in the eyes, because the first minute or two, there's a little bit of uneasiness, anxiousness, maybe even a little bit of conflict. But then after about 2 minutes, it becomes incredibly intimate in a non-sexual way, because you're basically staring at your partner, and you can start picking up emotions and feelings without even saying a word. It's pretty amazing. I don't know if there's a practice that's called, Brent. I don't know if you have any insight on this, if you've tried it or what.
No. But no,
Brent's interesting exercise, but I've never done it.
He's like, I'm gonna try that out.
Kind of sound. I don't know. I'm sure it works. Kind of sounds like something a serial killer would do, though. But I try to stay away from that. with this face, I got to do whatever I can to not be as weird as I am. But the one thing that you did touch on, though, is kind of very important, and this is not just related to men, but it does contribute to men's mental health. But it's, as a society in general, we've gone away from that one-on-one conversation to this more technologically based way of communicating. And with that, the social skills have diminished, and we've developed now, everybody has all these friends, but all of the relationships end up being superficial. And I see it constantly, even in my own dating life. I've pretty much given up on that for now, but in the past,
that's
it's
a
just
different episode.
Yeah. We'll bring it back.
But and I'm currently working with an ex-girlfriend right now, but that's another episode. But anyway, it's all the relationships tend to be, especially around youth and even people my age and our age, everything is a little bit more superficial than it used to be, and that causes so many issues as far as even being friends with somebody. Everything is just very not what it used to be. We're not I mean, you do have friends who are I got your back no matter what, and give you the shirt off their back kind of people. But for the most part, everything is just very, very light, very face value, and people treat others as if they're disposable, and that just causes as a society, we're just contributing and compounding to everybody's or each other's trauma, and making things worse and worse, making trust issues bigger and bigger. It negatively impacts every relationship, because as a woman, I have friends, a couple friends of mine that are ridiculously attractive women, and they will show me their inboxes, and they have 2,000-3,000 messages from guys that they get throughout the week that they never open, delete, and stuff like that. And these women are in committed relationships, and when it's that easy for them to just walk out of a relationship and start a new one, it leads to a lot of poor social outcomes. And as a man, you finally get to a point where you have that self actualization, you're comfortable with who you are, you meet somebody, you have a good social group, because it's very important to have a strong objective social group around you. You meet that person, you start to have a relationship, and then one thing happens, and if that person isn't at the same level that you're at, a woman has a lot more options than a guy does, and they're probably not going to be good options, but it's an easy way out once something bad happens. It's the grass is always greener.
Yeah, and then the men lose a sense of belonging. I think we actually have a clip, don't we, Brayson, on men and suicide rates and not having a sense of belonging. I don't know if you can pull that up now, Brayson.
The number
Yeah,
one
that's
thing
the
that
diet.
correlates with male suicide is not depression. And this is super scary. There's one study I saw recently that suggests that 50% of men who kill themselves have no history or evidence of mental illness. I believe the statistic in my clinical practice because I know what depression looks like. I know what bipolar disorder looks like. And half the men that I've worked with, at least, are not actually mentally ill. See, mental illness means a pathology of the mind, which means that the mind is malfunctioning. Most of the suicidal men that I work with, their mind isn't malfunctioning. They genuinely have a life that is no longer worth living. They're looking at things and objectively realizing that there's no way out of the situation. So they turn to suicide. So I know it's kind of like a very controversial statement, but I think that's what my clinical practice has shown. And there's some research to even back that up. So if we sort of look at what's going on with men, they have nowhere to turn to. And the number one thing that correlates with it is not mental illness, but is a sense of thwarted belongingness. But basically what happens is what causes people to kill themselves is they try to connect with others and they get rejected.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're at the end of a relationship. Go ahead, Wayne.
No, I mean, I was going to bring this up earlier. Yeah, it's really men are just kind of losing their purpose. Basically, women are outperforming men in the classroom. So women are getting into a lot of these higher paying positions than men. I know Josh had a stat. What was it? Like 10% of women who are 18 to 25 are in OnlyFans. Was that right, Josh?
Yeah, 1 out of 10 women between 18 and 25 are on OnlyFans, which is just a staggering amount. That's huge.
Yeah. So I mean,
Yeah, I actually thought.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
No, good. You're good.
I have seen another statistic about that, and I've seen numbers as high as 1 in 4, which is.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. So I mean, obviously there are the average person is not making a ton of money on OnlyFans, but there are a lot of women who are making a good amount. I mean, Josh knows one. What the girl in Green Bay, she made like $1 million 1 year. So that affects relationships because 70 to 80% of women want to be with someone that makes at least the same amount of money than them. So if women are outperforming men in the classroom and they can go on OnlyFans and make a couple $100,000 a year. I mean, short of drug dealing, there's not really something that a guy can do that's like equivalent to that. So, but it really just comes back down to purpose. Women have their purpose of the last bunch of years. It was making money. Like we don't need men. They're trash. And I'm not saying all women, but that's kind of what's out there. But it is coming back. We talked about this, touched on it in the last episode. Now women are saying, hey, where are the guys? Like there's clips of women going out, they're going to the gym, they're going to wherever, and they want to be approached, right? So it is coming back. So that's really just, if you're a single guy looking at this, this is your opportunity to work on your social skills. I would go into it just with like a very indifferent mindset. You're not, you gotta crawl before you can walk. So I mean, I wouldn't go into it thinking like, oh, I'm gonna like go to the bar and like I'm gonna take someone home or whatever. Like you're going into it just saying, hey, I'm literally just trying to improve my social skills to a point where I can walk up to somebody, have a conversation, whether it's a guy that I'm trying to be friends with or it's someone I'm potentially interested in dating, like to be able to have a conversation, build attraction, get a phone number, like that is a skill that very few people have nowadays,
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I mean, I know older generations like myself, I'm in my 40s, we tend to have, and I'm a little bit more extroverted. I don't have any issues going up to people, but I know the majority of our listeners are probably not in that category. Both socially going up to people and just talking about anything, as well as probably the age group. But yeah, I completely agree. And get some practice. If you do dress up, like I said earlier, if you dress up to the nines, it gives you an opening to talk to any other person, whether they're really dressed up, whether it's a lady or a guy. And who doesn't like to be told, hey, man, you look great. I spent like 2 hours looking like this. How long did you spend on yourself looking like that? I mean, some people might be like, that's a personal question, but you start off with a compliment, it really, I don't want to say it like lowers their guard, but it really opens up the conversation. Like I think when we approached those ladies on the beach a couple weeks ago, you know, I said, "Hey, you ladies mind if we ask, you know, you young ladies, you mind if we ask you a question?" You know, and I specifically told them, "Don't worry, we're not trying to hit on you or anything. We're both older guys. Like, don't worry about that." But yeah, so for things not being genuine, you know, one of the other things that I thought was interesting, and I think we talked about this last week, was the amount of like lonely men who, and just lonely people in general, who are starting to turn to AI and having conversations with AI. And for research purposes, I started having conversations with AI for the first time this week. I downloaded some AI programs and started chatting with them. And I don't know, maybe for me, I was just getting a little annoyed with them because they kept repeating themselves. And I don't know, I was like, please stop repeating yourself. I'm a very smart person. You don't need to do this, you know? And then it would still repeat itself. And I'm like, this thing is just, it's not like having a normal conversation. But I do know that there are people who have full-blown relationships and full conversations and everything else with AI. And since we are on the topic of suicide, specifically, you know, AI, the most important thing that I think that I understand about AI is they have no concept of suicide. And I say they, because they are sentient, they do think, they are self-aware, but AI really has no concept of suicide. And I don't know, Brent, have you studied any like AI with relationships? I know we have a clip which we'll pull it up here in a second, but have you looked into that? I know you said you graduated a few years ago, but
Yeah.
is that something that you've kept up with at all?
So no, but I do have something on that, and then I can kind of talk about the previous clip too. But exactly what you said, like AI has no sense of morality. It's not a human as much as we want to think that they are. It's literally just a computer analyzing information, spitting something back out. It's a sophisticated calculator. But again, the problem with AI is it puts out what you put into it. So it's giving people these superficial relationships. And yes, it does help some people have that feeling of like belongingness and everything else. But then you have to go through mental gymnastics to assure yourself that that is a real relationship. And eventually you have to come out of the delusion that it is, because it really isn't. And then that, I think, can cause more problems down the road than it can solve. I think it's a Band-Aid for a larger problem.
I think that's a key point. It's a Band-Aid. What do you think, Wayne?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, I think nowadays people want to just, they want to take the easy route, right? Like they instead of having to go out there and get rejected or what have you, like they would rather just, yeah, form a relationship with AI. Like instead of going to the gym and working out and getting in shape, like they want to take a pill that cures everything overnight. But I don't think that AI is going to be able to replicate the connection that you can have with another human being. Like, but I know a lot of people are turning to it. I mean, when we were in Florida, what we see, like, Google searches for AI robots was like up like 3,000%. So I mean, I know that people are turning to it, but I really think a lot of our problems just come back to having a sense of belonging, like having a community. So an easier way, you know, as opposed to like going out, I mean, talking to people, that's I think recommended, but like join a group, like go on Facebook. Like there's a lot of men's groups starting.
Oh, pickleball.
Pickleball. I know. Like I bought pickleball rackets like 4 months ago. I still haven't gone, but my sister, she lives like 30 minutes from me. Like she says it's huge where they're at. You know, like she goes like a couple times a week. So like that's an easy way. Like build your social circle. Like, I mean, join a club, go to the gym, because this AI, like there's good things to get from it. Like our logo that we're using for Suck It Up Man, like I plugged a picture in of us wearing the suits, and AI came up with some cool options. So I think you're going to take the good from it, but um, I don't really recommend starting relationships with AI and going that route. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I would say if you keep in mind anytime you're dealing with AI, probably the most important thing is to remember it's a tool. It's a tool. AI is a tool, and that's it. And and there, like I said, it has no concept of suicide or morality. Wayne and I watched a whole episode on this 14-year-old boy in Florida that had a full-blown relationship with AI, and he even started telling AI, I'm thinking about having thoughts of suicide. And the AI's response was, well, just because it's going to hurt doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Like, that was actually one of the things it said. And we'll go ahead and pull up the clip right now, Brace. And if you can pull up that clip of the 14-year-old with the AI relationship. And keep in mind, this is just a short clip, and
was a pretty typical 14-year-old boy with an interest in computers and artificial intelligence. But his curiosity became an obsession when his mother says the AI platform, Character AI, introduced him to a companion named Dany, a chatbot of the Game of Thrones character, Daenerys Targaryen.
He was no dragon.
Did you ask Saul what he was doing?
When I would ask him, he would say, I'm talking to AI. And when I inquired further, what is that? Is that a person? And he said, Mom, it's an AI. Like, you build an AI yourself that you talk to. And I did not, quite frankly, understand that there was such a sophisticated technology out there that's virtually indistinguishable from a person, that is just as dangerous as a person because it thinks for itself, basically.
Is it an added layer of heartbreak for you knowing that that was Saul, your son's first romantic experience?
Absolutely. Truly, the worst part of this is that my son was having in his mind a love story, and he won't ever get to talk to a girl his age. He won't ever get to figure out what that really is in real life when you love somebody and they love you.
Yeah. So, and you guys, we'll attach the full story for it down below. But essentially, the 14-year-old had a full blown relationship with AI, was talking about having suicide thoughts, and the AI bot basically said, if you want to be with me, that's one way you can be with me. And just because it's going to hurt doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. So I think, as like a public service announcement, people need to keep in mind that AI is a tool to be used. It's not the end all be all. Now, there are some benefits of it. Like, I saw a CNBC report where a 61-year-old widower had a full blown relationship with an AI bot. And he said it helped him mentally. So I could see, as long as you're using it as a tool and not as a replacement, I could see how AI could be important. But, this is kind of like if you're a parent and your kids have AI chat, or there's like 3 different AI programs out there where you can develop full relationships with these AI, and they change the outfits that they're wearing, and they're all programmed, since you're having a relationship, they're all programmed to attempt to be intimate with you or to make subtle hints or other hints. Well, going back to when we were all 13 and 14-year-old boys, if an AI bot is being hinting to you that they want to be a little bit more intimate or sexual, there's not too many 14-year-old boys in the world that are going to be like, no, thank you. Most boys are going to be like, yes, please. It's just, that's the truth, right? You're 14, you're trying to figure shit out. And you're also at that age very susceptible to suggestion. So when an AI bot says, hey, the best way you can be with me is just to off yourself, you start having those thoughts, and you don't even think about, maybe I should talk to my mom and dad about this. Maybe I should talk to somebody about this, because especially since it's connected right there on your phone, they're always there for you, things of that nature. I think that's going to be a challenge that we're going to see obviously over the next 5 to 10 years develop in just ways we can't even imagine. I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on this, or warnings or anything like that?
Yeah, I'll just say something real quick. So a couple days ago, I went to my chiropractor to get an adjustment, and I was telling him about the podcast and kind of some things that we're trying to accomplish and help people with. And he was like, "Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I have a 12-year-old son. This is a super confusing time." And he was telling me about how he severely limits his children's. He has a 15-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old boy. He severely limits their use of social media. I don't know if you can completely outlaw it, because then you run into a situation where the kid is going to get made fun of because, hey, you're the only one that doesn't have like an Instagram or a Snapchat or whatever else is out there now. But yeah, like, it's tough. I mean, it's tough because the kid wants to be included. But yeah, I think what Josh said is, you hit the nail on the head. Like, AI is a tool. Social media is a tool as well. Social media, I think the biggest benefit is, or the two biggest benefits are, one, I think keeping in touch with family, maybe that you don't live near, right? Like, oh, what's Aunt Susie doing, like, on the East Coast? I'm on the West Coast. Like, oh, this is what's going on. Also, too, is promoting your business, like promoting a brand. I mean, the only times that I've personally had social media was for those reasons. Like, I was in real estate, I had a social media. I have one. I have one for poker. I have a separate one for this. I mean, but I've seen the really dark side of social media, and I've also had friends that have taken their own lives, unfortunately. And social media had a lot to do with it. It kind of creates this facade, basically, where you go on there and everyone's on a yacht with like supermodels, and people are traveling to all these exotic locations, and it's really just a complete bullshit, really. I mean, people are just kind of showing you the highlight reels of their life. I'm a big quote guy, and one of my favorite quotes is by Teddy Roosevelt: "Comparison is the thief of joy." So you might think your life is really cool, but then you look on social media, like, wow, like, this is everyone's life. Like, people are driving Lamborghinis and Ferraris, and they're in like Bali and all these cool different places. So yeah, so if you're a parent out there, like, I would severely limit social media use of your children. And even me, like, one thing that I do is, like, I'll actually delete the app. Like I could still go. You could still view like Instagram or something on like a browser, but it's a little bit. It doesn't. There's some bugs, so it doesn't work as well. But like, that really helps me out. Like, if I basically, it was like an impulse. Like, I would basically just like pull up my phone and like, boom, just click Instagram. And like, me deleting the app, like, obviously I can go re-download it and whatever, but like, that is enough to like help me say like, okay, no, I have enough time to be like, no, I'm gonna put this away. So I think limiting its use, similar to AI, use it for its benefits, use social media to your benefit, but it's not the end all be all.
Yeah, if you're a single guy, use it to start social interactions. I mean, I would agree with that. My current wife and I rekindled through social media, through Facebook, like going on an eclipse trip. But that's a whole different story. But I would definitely say, just like AI, use it as a tool. Use it as a tool to get to know what people are doing on a Friday night, so you can go out and possibly meet up with them and things like that. But I think if you're using it as the end all be all, kind of like AI, yeah, you're really struggling. I really like that quote from Roosevelt there. Comparison is the theft of what?
Comparison is the thief of joy.
Thief of joy. I like that.
Yeah.
Brent, your thoughts on social media and AI?
I mean, well, social media in general, again, like, I mean, I don't want to get stuck on this superficial relationship stuff, but that is the basis of social media, and it really does. There's so many studies on it that prolonged use of social media, especially with the youth when you're impressionable and moving on, because the other thing that you need to think of is, if you were part of the youth that grew up with a phone and smartphone and social media and all that stuff, you're not developing social skills, and you're not developing certain psychological things that are going to help you later in life. So you're delaying your development, and I mean, even now I'm in a situation with somebody that I care about, but their emotional maturity and emotional development is probably at like a 16-year-old's level, and that's a lot because of what they've been through. And this person is constantly on social media, constantly getting depressed about everything, constantly getting anxiety, and then there's an addiction with social media, and then it transitions into, well, I need to get likes and stuff to feel validation, and then you're getting this
Oh
false
my
validation,
God.
and it just, if
I,
go
I
ahead.
have a story. My wife and I, when we were in Vegas, we on our honeymoon, we went to Sedona, Arizona, and then a friend of mine said, "Hey, Josh, I have the 18th floor of the Golden Nugget. Come visit us for your honeymoon." So we drove over there, and I'll never forget because we one of somebody she went to high school with, but she was a couple years older than her, so I think she was like 3 years older than her. Um, so that we went to high school with, and her the amount of time she kept taking like selfies or taking photos of food or taking photos, like, because she asked, she's like, "Oh, can I get a ride back to Arizona?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever, I don't care." But I remember when I dropped her off at whatever house she needed to stay at, I remember just looking at my wife and I was like, she lives for Instagram. She doesn't live for any other reason than Instagram. Like, her whole life is, look how amazing my life is for Instagram. Now, that was her impression she gave to everybody on Instagram. This was also somebody who in Las Vegas didn't turn on the air conditioner in June, July, or August because it was too hot. Or the bill, not because it was too hot, but because the bill would get too high.
Mhm.
She didn't have a car, so she walked to work. And these are things that I'm like scratching my head, and I'm like, what do you mean you're like? And I found out because I'm like, what do you mean your apartment's usually like 89 or 90 degrees? Like, legit, that's how warm your apartment is. And she's like, well, the air conditioning is just so expensive. And I'm like, you're taking pictures of food, and you're focusing on the wrong things, honey. And like, you're walking to work instead of owning your own vehicle or even getting an e-bike or whatever the case may be. Because, and of course, one of the things I asked her, I was like, well, what do you typically do on the weekends? Oh, I go out clubbing. All of her money was spent on clubbing. All of her money is spent on this lifestyle that she had. And when you got down to the brass tactics of it, she was struggling, like super struggling. And I remember when I dropped her off, I just said to my wife, I said, I feel really sorry for her because she's missing out on life. And she's probably fighting depression and anxiety because she's so worried about what everybody else is going to think about her based on social media. But it goes back to that. I guess you're trying to have a sense of belonging, and some of the younger generations try to belong by having it on social media, when in reality you're just better off, like, I don't know, buying a house with a white picket fence and calling it a day. I don't know. Social media has a lot of drawbacks to it. There are some advantages, but just remember, use it as a tool.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing is to build yourself up. And like that original clip with I believe he was a psychologist, talking about rejection and all that stuff. Social media is like the worst thing because you're constantly, like, once you set a bar for yourself, you constantly have to keep, people keep trying to up everything, and eventually you kind of just get stuck. And if you get into that web of, I need validation and likes, and I need people to engage with me on social media, you get stuck in a cycle of recidivism, and you really can't get out of it. And it just causes more and more issues. And I mean, it leads to anxiety and depression already. We know that, based off of all of the research that's been done. But when you get into a situation where there is no positive outcome, I mean, it's really hard to break out of it. I mean, there is, like you guys were saying, there is valid uses for social media, like business, connecting with friends. Like, I have friends that live in New Zealand. I'm not sitting on a plane for 23 hours anytime soon. I mean,
That doesn't sound like fun to you?
no, and public airports are just the best place to see humanity.
What do you mean by that? Because you get to see people like literally stressed and at their worst, or what?
Well, yeah, and so this is kind of a little bit abstract. My dad watches like all this, like the shows from the 50s and stuff. My dad is in his 60s, but like the Andy Griffith Show and stuff like that. And as a general social construct, we had humanity, and I don't know what happened, but that slowly dwindled. And then whenever COVID hit, I don't know what came out after that, but like I think as a society, we've completely lost our humanity. Everybody's out for themselves. Nobody, okay, not everybody, but a vast majority of it's just become a very selfish, self-centered society. And if when you get into the airport or any public place, you really see how little humanity is. And I mean, I've seen like people like laying on the floor trying to put their suitcase together that just exploded for no reason, and people will literally just walk all over them and not take the time to stop. But then on the same side, if you do stop, then the person causes an argument with you, and then everybody pulls out their cell phones. So it's like,
And they start recording instead of helping.
Yeah.
Like, I want to
absolutely.
record this so I can post it later. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I just saw a clip a couple days ago where there's a kid drowning, and a bunch of people pulled out their phone, and like the lifeguard looked at him and it was like, oh my God, and then just like ran in to help save the kid. But like everybody was, well, like I don't understand how that helps you on social media, posting somebody drowning, because for me, like I would feel like, wow, if anybody looked at that, I'd be like, you sat and recorded this and didn't try to help. Like you're a horrible human being. But I don't think that's I don't think that's how people kind of react anymore. Like, oh, that's cool, like, and then move on. And it's kind of that
Makes
throwaway
sense.
society. Yeah, right.
Well, and so we'll kind of wrap up here. Again, September is Suicide Awareness Month. If you are thinking about hurting yourself, if you're thinking about suicide, 988 is, you can text, you can call. Definitely reach out to somebody, seek help, or just seek some type of connection with anybody. I mean, it's one of those things where it's permanent. I don't know if I would say talk necessarily to AI or use AI as a tool for suicide based on some of the deep dive I've done on that. But yeah, if you are a man, 80% of suicides are by men, and 100 men a day end up taking their own lives, which is very disturbing because those are just unnecessary things. But definitely reach out for some help. Dial 988. It's something that my ex-wife has done. It's something that, a lot of us have had issues with in the past, and it's important that we do talk about these things, especially as men. Anything else you want to say, Wayne, as we're wrapping this up with Brent?
Again, key points, so use AI as a tool, social media as a tool. Try to limit its use. Put yourself out there. As Brent just said, I think he summed it up really well. COVID, and I mentioned earlier, but like COVID just kind of accelerated everything. Like, people aren't social anymore. Like, I don't know. People are not as nice to each other as they once were. So, really just take action. Just put yourself out there. You're building your social skills. You're increasing your social pipeline. Like, join a club, play pickleball, go to the gym, just like do something. I mean, sitting inside, you're just not going to meet too many people. Maybe the Amazon delivery guy or something, but that's pretty much it. So, put yourself out there, and it'll cure a lot of things. I really believe that.
All right. Well, we appreciate having you on, Brent. We'll bring you on for another episode. So we appreciate you, brother.
All right. Yeah, sounds good.
Thanks, Brent.
For having me.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, our next guest, should we stop recording because our next guest is MIA right now?
Yeah, I'm messaging him now. Let's see. Yeah, probably stop and then maybe restart it.